Greetings, metaphysicians. This is episode 165. What is the soul? In this episode, we're talking about that eternal part of us that moves through and beyond this current lifetime. Tune in and enjoy.
You're listening to Let's Get Metaphysical. This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed. It should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discernment, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn from this show.
Let's get meta.
Welcome to the Let's Get Metaphysical podcast. I'm your host, Renata Maniaci. Here to remind you that you are a spiritual being having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. Make the most of it. This is Season 7, Heaven on Earth, and this is episode 165. What is the soul? And we're going to jump right in today. Are you ready? Let's get meta. Master Angels, I request your presence, guidance, and support through this episode. Please help these words to be useful to all listeners on their evolutionary journey. Let me know the truth, speak the truth, become the truth, and be the truth. And please let this episode reach whoever needs to hear it. Thank you with gratitude and full faith. Bless creation. So, what is the soul? Kind of an extension of every other episode that I've done on here, especially in reference to my opening statement about being a spiritual being occupying a temporary human body to have a human experience here on lovely planet Earth. What does that mean, a spiritual being? And what is the soul? You know, it's an interesting thing to talk about in an episode to beings who will be listening, all of whom have souls. And yet, in this body, we don't necessarily remember that we have a soul. What is a soul? What does it do? Where does it come from? We may have some idea about what a soul is and what it does, but for the most part, in conscious human existence, is not only a difficult question to answer for a lot of humans, but also it's an incomplete answer, whatever it is. And that's if the human even acknowledges the existence of souls. We have plenty of humans on the planet now who have chosen paths of just completely outside the realm of ever even thinking if one would have a soul. So it's not even a concern. We have humans who have chosen religious or other even spiritual paths that don't believe that there is a soul. And we have others who believe in a soul, but maybe don't exactly understand what it is. There's a range, as there always is for these things. And I won't pretend that in my human body as I am right now, I fully can explain or even remember everything that a soul is. But I will do my best, and I will be tuning into my higher guidance, and I'll also be bringing in some words that my teacher, John Douglas, has said on this subject, because that is the very best way that I have heard a soul described. in this body while I've been in this lifetime. So that will happen. But first, my more, I don't know what I would call it, I guess my more human, elementary, simple way of explaining what the soul is, and by the soul I mean a soul, our souls, this part of us that goes on. That's how I would start by explaining the soul, is just there are, if we want to get really simple, there are two parts of us. There is the part of us that is temporary and the part of us that is eternal. And the temporary part of us is just that. It won't last. It is, and that comprises of our bodies, in a lot of cases our personalities and egos, our personas, our any feature of our physical bodies, faces, our voices, maybe how we move. Those are the temporary aspects of us. And in this lifetime, it might look very different than in your previous lifetime. Those things, how you look, how you move, how you sound, even your personality, even your purpose, what you came here to do, that changes, that can change. Even your skills, your abilities in this lifetime, probably different, at least somewhat, than what it was in your last lifetime, what they were in your last lifetime. You might not even have been on this planet the last time you were embodied. And so if you were embodied in your previous lifetime on a different planet, maybe the body looked different. Maybe it was not what we know as a human body, or it could have been a different type of humanoid body, or a more what we would think of in this lifetime as an alien body. Maybe. Maybe you had a way different sound to your voice. Maybe you didn't use a voice. Maybe you used telepathy or some other mode of communication in that lifetime. Maybe you moved in a different way. Maybe you didn't have to walk on two legs. Maybe you had wings or different ways of moving and being. But this is all to say, these things were temporary. Your last lifetime, this lifetime, and if you embody again, your next lifetime. So those are the things that are temporary. Those are examples of things that are temporary. And what we're getting at in this episode is the soul, which is the part of you that is not temporary. It's the part of you that is immortal, the part of you that is eternal, the part of you that lives on through this temporary body, this temporary collection of muscles and bones and vocal cords and even the unseen aspects of your mental capacity, your personality, your ego, your wants, your desires. We touched on this in the last episode, Mortal Immortal, and I promised we'd be talking about this time. And so that's the easiest way of kind of explaining or visualizing the first aspects of what a soul is. Okay, so fine. It's that immortal or eternal part of us that lives on. What is that? What does that mean? And again, I'm still on the way that I would describe it from this lifetime, from my personality, from this body. I have not moved beyond that yet. And I've definitely thought of it as the record in some way, the record of everything that we have been, or everyone we have been, everything we have done and learned. I've always felt that there's kind of a connection between our soul and what some call the Akashic Records. I've never done an episode on the Akashic Records. I don't know if I can or should. I know I can, but I feel like I don't know enough about it myself. But that's a term that people use as like the library of everything that's ever happened for a soul. And some describe it as this other place. You can almost think of it like a giant cosmic library where you could go in and pull a book, and that book is the book of your soul and tells everything that that soul, your soul, has ever experienced, something like that. But what I'm getting at here is that the soul holds that for each individual. And I've always kind of seen the soul as being a drop of the source, however you visualize that. So the source of everything that has been created, whether it's this planet, other planets, what we know as the universe, everything in the universe, what we know as the multiverse, everything in the multiverse. I think of it as this creationary pool almost, and that souls are little drops that come out of that pool and individuate and leave the pool to have their own experiences, their own lifetimes. And that's that drop that continues on through and beyond each lifetime, through and beyond each body, each persona, each ego, even each purpose or purposes for incarnating. These drops of souls scattered throughout all of creation, whatever that means. Even if we just look at Earth as the only creation, which I think is highly unlikely, and is kind of proven to be not accurate anymore. But just all the drops of divinity, the drops of source, the drops of that creationary pool that are on this planet, if that's easier to think about than everything, because thinking about this stuff can get overwhelming sometimes, and I feel personally that it's overwhelming in this really beautiful way, overwhelming in this really transcendent, wondrous way. When I try to zoom out and think about all of the souls in creation having different experiences, not just as humans or animals, perhaps on this planet, but elsewhere, and before and after, and how many there are if we keep zooming out to the different solar systems and the different galaxies, it gets overwhelming, but in like a really transcendent kind of way, in a way that it's like, yeah, it's undeniable that there is something else, that there's something that ordered this creation. This could not have possibly happened on its own. That's where I go to. You don't have to go there, but that's where I go. I get blissfully, cosmically overwhelmed by the idea of how much there is in this existence and how blatant to me it is that it must have been ordered and created in a certain way. But anyways, I'm straying a little bit from the topic of souls. So my own definition, if you will, of a soul is that eternal part of us that goes on and that has been its own divine drop from the creationary pool that moves through each experience and keeps growing in experience through each lifetime, if you can call it a lifetime. And that's something I've been thinking about too. Maybe we'll have another episode on that. We say lifetime, and obviously when I talk about it, I'm thinking of a human lifetime, right? Like on this planet, a human lifetime can be anywhere from 0 years to around 100 years. Not that many humans live beyond 100 years, but say 0 and 120 years. That is what our human lifetime looks like in a human body for the most part on this planet. Well, I mean, I am going on a tangent here, but I will for a minute. What is a lifetime if you're in a different form? If we're in a different form that only is between 0 and 5 years of life, like that's a whole different way of thinking about a lifetime. Or something else that is much longer, between 0 and 1,000 or 2,000 years, that's the lifetime span. It kind of changes. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't change the way we think about existence and lifetimes. So that's just something I've also been thinking about. But back to souls. I'm just tuning in with my guidance here to see if they want to come in and say anything in particular about a soul before I read what my teacher has said about souls. And what I'm hearing now is that it is very much a drop of divinity. I could name this episode Drops of Divinity, but then people reading it wouldn't necessarily know that we're talking about souls from the outset. There is a level of perfection that lives within the soul. And sometimes, if not always, it is difficult to fully tap into your soul self while in a body and to have the energy of the soul, the juices of the soul, if you will, permeate the physical body, that physical human lifetime. And that's because of a lot of different things. And one of those things is karma. And one of those things is just mechanics of the soul and how it fits in with a body. And one of those things is just how we are, the rules of having a body on this planet. And a lot of people spend a lot of time in this lifetime trying to reconnect with their soul. And they do that in a variety of ways. Meditation is one of those ways. Spiritual development is one of those ways. Whether on purpose or by accident, some people feel as though they are connecting with their soul when they are using psychedelics or plant medicine. My 2 cents is that maybe don't do it that way. I've spoken about that before, but briefly, it's just because when you do that, you open up the door to everything, not just the good, but really scary and dark things can walk into when you do it that way. But the point is, many humans want to connect with their souls, to reconnect with their souls, whether they're conscious of that being what they're doing through these different activities or not. But this spark of divinity, this drop of perfection that lives in us is there, but not always accessible in the way that we want it to be. And I'm recognizing now that as I'm talking about this, it's making it sound like the soul is small. And I want to reiterate, the soul is not small. I've used this phrase before, but a good way to visualize a soul is like in a human body is trying to fit a rainbow into a Coke bottle. You can't do it. The vessel's not big enough to hold the soul because the soul is so great. And so we get what we get. And through experience in life in this human body, we probably all have different experiences and recognitions of one's soul self. Some people might be more ensouled than others, and there might be moments in your life and times in your life where you're more ensouled and you really feel your soul speaking through you, through your human body, more than other times, where maybe your personality or ego is speaking more through your human body than your soul. And that's normal. And now I want to just move. I'm going to quote my teacher for some of the things that he said about souls. And this was in a recent event, a recent tour event that he had in remotely, but for LA, Los Angeles, at the end of 2024. He said, the soul is one of the most important things to firstly accept and understand that we have, and secondly, to understand how important it is when it comes to these lifetimes where you have access to the universal truth of nature, and how that soul needs to be your patron to get you into these higher states of functioning and understanding. In the good aspect of your existence, in the good potential of your life, your soul gives all the fuel for any of the good directions, outcomes, impulses, reactions, thoughts, and emotions that you may override your own imperfections with. The soul is an energy that is connected to your system, usually, and it's literally your spawning. It is who you really are in the creation of you, in the image of God. And it contains a level of operating perfection loaded up with all the things you need for every lifetime. I could never put the soul, this is me again, I could never put the soul in those words. I don't know anyone else who could put the soul in those words. John Douglas has also said that the soul is a collection of experiences. Most simply, a collection of experiences. And I think that we can wrap our heads around on some level, that we can understand on some level. And again, those words were the words of my teacher, John Douglas, a master healer from Sydney, Australia. And so even though I've read those words that I just said before about what he said about the soul, there's no way that I could have come up with that in those words. They're so true and so correct and so deep in a way that my human brain can't think about the soul. And that's why I wanted to bring it into this episode and honor him and his words on the soul. And I'm sure that there are probably other teachers who have explained what the soul is and used other good and beautiful words to describe that. And why are we talking about this? Because we all have souls. If you're listening, you have a soul. And it is the part of us that will go on after we drop the body. And having some kind of deeper understanding of that within these bodies, within this lifetime, could help us. Could help our development, could help our understanding, could give us that extra fuel that we need to do the next thing that we need to do in this lifetime. Or it's just an interesting story that I'm weaving. I ran into someone earlier last year who jokingly, and I had forgotten about this, but apparently there's this joke or this trope that redheads don't have souls. I don't know where it came from, but she had said that, and I just kind of laughed and like in my head, like, how would you be talking to me if you didn't have a soul? And because in this body I'm not all-knowing and remembering, maybe there are instances of humans without souls. Maybe there are instances where the soul has been ripped from the body, Voldemort style, like in Harry Potter, in the Harry Potter series. Maybe there is, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I don't know about those things. I haven't heard about those things. But I'm fairly certain that anyone who's hearing my voice right now and listening to these words most likely has a soul that is bigger and greater and holds all of the experiences that it has ever lived, it has ever had. And for me, a big part of this lifetime is reconnecting with my soul as much as I can, bringing as much of my soul and my soul power into this current body that I am inhabiting for this lifetime. Why? Power, I guess, so that I can be more effective in this lifetime, be more perfect in this lifetime, achieve my goals and my purposes in this lifetime easier, more effective. I think I said that. I have found that my spiritual practices have helped connect me more to my soul. There's literally a process that came from my teacher called soul repair. Soul repair. It's about 14 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, kind of a meditation process. I've talked about the processes before. I will talk about them more soon in the future, but this is something you can listen to, that the angels arrive when you press play and help to connect you to your soul. Unbelievable, right? This is spiritual technology. We have AI and we have SI, spiritual intelligence, right? And spiritual technology. But this is a real thing. And so processes like that to help me connect to my soul, available to everyone if you're interested. globalcma.org if you're interested in looking up soul repair or any other processes that help connect you to your soul. And I'll go into this, I guess, more, as I said, in future episodes. I think we're closing in on a new season coming soon that might be all about these types of processes. But that's important to me. And if you've ever had an experience in your life, in your lifetime, in this lifetime, of being more connected with your soul, you'll know what I mean, and you'll know how it feels, and you'll know how exhilarating it is and how wonderful it is. And by wonderful, I mean literally full of wonder. And reminds you that it's not just you in this body, in this lifetime, and that that's all there is. If you are connected to your soul, you deeply know that there's more. And so I'll leave it there for today, our little discussion about what is a soul. And I hope that gave you a better idea about yours. So as always, thank you for listening. Stay positive, stay safe, and stay meta.
The Let's Get Metaphysical podcast is an Up and Awaken production and is produced and hosted by Renata Maniaci. Our intention is to raise the vibration of the planet by sharing, validating, and normalizing spiritual and metaphysical experiences. The Let's Get Meta podcast is inspired by angels and supported by angels. If you would like to be an angel donor to the podcast, visit patreon.com/letsgetmeta. Thank you for listening. Stay meta.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.